There's a girl in an old photograph I found a few years back. She's standing on a city sidewalk, 1943, hair perfectly pinned and waved, wearing a cotton dress that probably cost 2 weeks of ration stamps, and she looks absolutely put together. Not a hair out of place. No drugstore nearby, no dry shampoo, no hot tools. The country was at war. Half the ingredients in commercial beauty products had been redirected to the military. And yet, there she is. So, what exactly did women know back then that we've completely forgotten? Pull up a chair. There's a whole chapter of American beauty history sitting right here, and most of it has been buried under 60 years of advertising. Let me show you what was actually going on inside those 1940s bathrooms, or more accurately, what was happening without them. The first thing you need to understand is the context. By 1942, the War Production Board had placed strict limits on the metals used for bobby pins, the alcohol in hairsprays, the petroleum in styling products. Manufacturers had to cut their cosmetic output dramatically. A woman who had relied on her weekly visit to the salon suddenly found that gasoline rationing made that trip a luxury she couldn't justify. Home hairdressing wasn't a trend, it was a necessity. And women adapted with a kind of quiet ingenuity that would genuinely surprise you. Bread, that was one of the first tricks. Stale white bread, torn into small pieces, rubbed through the roots of dry hair. The soft crumb absorbed oil and product buildup the same way modern dry shampoo does, cornstarch pulling grease away from the scalp, leaving the hair with more body. It sounds strange until you think about what dry shampoo actually is. It's an absorbent powder with fragrance. The 1940s version just happened to come from the kitchen. Women who had access to Fuller's Earth, a naturally occurring clay mineral used in industrial processes, used that too. Better absorption, more grit, easier to brush out. Some women mixed a small amount of talcum powder with a few drops of cologne and worked it through their hair with a fine-tooth comb. Effective. Simple. Nothing to buy. Finger waves were not just a style choice during this era. They were strategic. Setting hair in tight, controlled waves while damp allowed a woman to control frizz and extend the life of a style for 4 or 5 days without washing. The technique itself goes back to the 1920s, but wartime women refined it into something almost architectural. The process required sugar water, literally 1 or 2 teaspoons of regular granulated sugar dissolved in a cup of warm water, worked through damp hair as a setting lotion before pinning. The sugar molecules coat the hair shaft, creating hold as the water evaporates. The result is firm, glossy, and it holds for days in normal humidity. Commercial setting lotions at the time used much the same chemistry, just with added fragrance and packaging. Women without access to those products discovered they didn't need them. Beer was another one. Flat beer applied to damp hair before setting gave remarkable body and hold. The malt proteins coat the hair, the sugars provide structure, and the slight acidity closes the cuticle and adds shine. Hairdressers in the 1930s and 40s knew this. It was written about in trade publications mentioned in women's magazines. By the wartime years, when store shelves were unreliable, women were using whatever was available, and beer was often available. The smell dissipates completely once the hair dries. This is not a myth. Protein-based setting treatments for fine hair are still sold today. They just come in sleek bottles and cost $40. Boar bristle brushing was religious practice in this period. 100 strokes a night sounds like a fairy tale passed down from mothers and grandmothers, but it had real mechanical function. A stiff boar bristle brush, worked through the hair from root to tip, physically redistributes the natural oil produced by the scalp sebum down through the mid-shaft and ends where the hair needs it most. Regular brushing meant women could go longer between washes while their hair actually looked better, not worse. This is something the modern obsession with daily washing has almost entirely erased. Washing every day strips that natural oil faster than the scalp can replace it, which triggers more oil production. which creates the cycle that makes daily washing feel necessary. These women were not washing daily. Many were washing once a week, sometimes less, and their hair looked better for it. Vinegar rinses. Apple cider or white vinegar, heavily diluted in water, maybe 1 tablespoon to a quart, used as a final rinse after washing. The mild acidity neutralizes the alkalinity left by soap-based shampoos and hard water minerals. The hair cuticle flattens, shine increases, the scalp pH normalizes. This is why modern apple cider vinegar rinses have made a comeback among the natural hair community. It's not a new discovery. It was standard practice in American households for decades, and it simply fell away when commercial conditioners arrived in the 1950s and promised to do the same thing with less effort. Rag rollers and pin curls replaced the electric rollers and curling irons that women couldn't always access or afford to use. Strip a worn cotton sheet into long pieces. Wrap damp sections of hair around them. Sleep on it. The cotton is gentle, the curl is soft, and you wake up with a set that you can brush into waves or leave tight. Pin curls, small sections of hair wound flat against the scalp and secured with a single bobby pin, required no heat at all. The art was in placement. Where you pinned determined the direction of the curl, the volume at the root, the shape of the finished wave. Women learned this by watching each other, by reading the beauty pages of magazines like McCall's and Ladies' Home Journal, by passing techniques across backyard fences. It was a shared knowledge system. There's something worth sitting with here. These techniques were not primitive or desperate stopgap measures. They were sophisticated responses to material constraints built on a genuine understanding of how hair behaves. The women of the 1940s were not waiting for a product to solve their problems. They were the solution. They understood their hair as a material to be worked, affected by moisture, by oil, by tension, by time, and they worked it accordingly. That knowledge was communal. It was passed down, talked over, refined over years. Then the post-war consumer economy arrived, and within a decade, the transaction replaced the technique. Buy this. Use that. Don't touch it with your hands. And slowly, gradually, the knowledge faded out of circulation. Some of it is coming back. You can find tutorials on finger waving, on heatless curl methods, on vinegar rinses and boar bristle brushes. Women are rediscovering these things through trial and error, through old magazines, through archives. But there's a difference between stumbling onto something and understanding why it works, understanding the actual mechanics, the chemistry, the physical logic behind the technique. That understanding is what the 1940s woman had, and it's what most modern beauty content doesn't bother to give you. If you want to use these methods seriously, start with one. Try the cold water rinse, or the boar bristle brush, or the sugar water set on a damp ponytail. Give it 3 weeks before you judge. These are slow techniques. They work on the same timeline as hair itself, not instant, not dramatic, but quietly, persistently effective. That photograph from 1943 is still in a box upstairs. Every time I look at it, I think about everything that woman knew that nobody bothered to write down. Some of it, at least, I've managed to find. If you've come across any of these techniques yourself, or if you've actually used them, I'd genuinely like to hear about it in the comments.